Base. The aircraft carrier Coral Sea and 2 escort ships returned home after 7.5 months at sea. That meant a happy homecoming for thousands of sailors based here in Hampton Roads. Terry ZAHN cruised into the naval base this afternoon on the Coral Sea, and he's live at the base right now. Terry, of course, this was no ordinary homecoming.
Diana, it certainly isn't. I'm right here at the head of Pier 12, the windiest place on Earth, and behind me is the Coral Sea, what they call the ageless warrior. She sure proved herself on this deployment. Before we talk about the homecoming, just a few words about this ship and why she's so special. The Navy usually retires ships when they get to be 30 years old. The Coral Sea is 40 years old. She was begun in World War II. As most of us know, about 2 years ago, she spent a number of months, more than a year, in the Navy shipyard in Portsmouth being completely modernized. She's too small to operate F-14 jet fighters, so they modernized her to accept the Navy's new F-18 jet fighters and attack planes. There were 4 squadrons aboard on this deployment. It was the first time they've ever been used in the Atlantic Fleet. Shortly after the overhaul, there was a collision, and I guess most of us remember that. It seemed that the Coral Sea was getting off to a bad start. But what followed was one of the most eventful cruises for any carrier since World War II. 52,000 miles after it left Norfolk in October, the Coral Sea steamed the last endless miles home. In all its 40 years of service, there had never been a cruise quite like this. First, the freedom of navigation exercise, ending in strikes against Libyan missile sites and patrol boats. And then the retaliatory strikes last month against Benghazi, an operation the captain said electrified the crew.
You could feel the excitement throughout the ship, and you could hear them cheering all the way up where I sit on the bridge. I think it's fair to say that everyone was extremely exhilarated.
It was no ordinary cruise and no ordinary homecoming. Even the Secretary of the Navy came aboard to pass out awards and the Navy unit commendation.
It is the hard work of these people working port and starboard shifts down in the engine room month after month away from their families that really is what the heroics in this cruise is all about.
And then there was Governor Belial's and mayors and vice mayors and civic leaders. The shortest speech got the biggest cheer. All the speeches and commendations were greatly appreciated, I'm sure. What these guys are most interested in today is a sight they haven't seen for 7.5 months. Pier 12 at the Norfolk Naval Base, today crammed with loved ones.
I feel great. It's great to be back. I feel like, letting loose, but I'm trying to hold it in right now. In front of all the other shipmates and stuff like that. I really don't want to break down, but I got an idea. Once I see the pier, I probably will.
How you doing? Guy, come on, look at this guy.
It's been a good cruise. We made it. We're proud.
I should add that many of the awards that were presented today were presented to the engineers. There were some who said this ship would never make it to the Med, would never last 6 months, much less 7.5, would have to be towed back. Tonight there are a lot of very smug engineers saying, I told you so. But Coral Sea wasn't the only ship to return today. Her entire battle group of 7 ships came home to various Atlantic Fleet ports, 2 of them here to Norfolk. Shortly before noon, the cruiser Biddle pulled into Pier 7. She had a full schedule during the long deployment. She participated in a number of exercises as well as in the Libyan raid, and believe me, there were no sad faces on Pier 7 as she finally came home. And a few piers down, the Monongahela steamed into happy loved ones waiting for its crew. That ship and the Biddle spent 2 months in the Indian Ocean, and the Monongahela, which by the way is an oiler, resupplied other ships in the fleet 220 times. That's a lot. Welcome home to all. The sailors returning home today brought with them more than 7.5 months of sea stories. They also brought home the threat of international terrorism. I am standing right now on top of Live 10, and over here on my left is a new security fence with barbed wire and concrete barriers surrounding it. Now, that's a far cry from what Pier 12 used to be like. We could sometimes drive right up to the ship on the pier. But as Patty Snell reports, base security is taking the threat of terrorism very seriously.
A Navy homecoming is exciting, crowded, and colorful. But it's not an unusual event. The ceremonies are as old as the Navy itself. But there was something different at the Coral Sea's homecoming, fear of a bomb. Fear that Libya would retaliate against the men who took part in last month's air raid.
People, back over, please. Thank you. Watch out.
2 bomb-sniffing dogs searched the piers and anything that went near the carrier.
I'm always nervous about finding something. These dogs are trained on 9 different explosive odors, some of the most common used today.
Police boats patrolled the water for the unusual, and under the water, divers searched for proof of Libyan threats. None were found. Most people were not surprised.
I don't think it's really any cause for worry. I think we pretty much said what we had to say, and I think the Libyans understand that as well as American people.
When it happened, I was scared to death. You know, I couldn't sleep. I'm sure everyone was like that, but now that they're back, it seems like things have calmed down a lot since then.
But others agree with the police assessment.
Because the dog is still out there. So anything can happen.
The tight security won't end at the Coral Sea's homecoming. Police say as long as Libya remains a threat, they'll continue to patrol these celebrations. If that's the case, Navy police could be on their guard for a long time to come. Patty Snell, The Daily News.
But Diana, security or no security, this was a very happy day. Most of the people with wives and sweethearts are home now, but one of the most popular spots here on the Navy base for those guys coming off the ship was the McDonald's and the Burger King right down the road here. Those are something that you really miss overseas. Good old American hamburgers and French fries. Diana?
Those Big Mac attacks. Well, Terry, now that they're finally home from this long tour, will they have a chance to rest now?
Yes, they should have a time where they, in the Navy talk, stand down for a while. Next, they'll go in for a very brief overhaul, which is a minor overhaul to install new systems and renovate some of the older ones. But they'll get a chance to rest, and boy, do they deserve it. Back to you.
The aircraft carrier Coral Sea is back home again. This was the most eventful cruise for the carrier in its